we are have the honor to meet Aaron. Aaron is an investigator working out of the U.S. in North Carolina. I'm going to turn it to Aaron. I'm going to ask Aaron if you can introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit more about what you do, maybe what brought you into the field, how long you've been in it, and some of the roles that you've held.
Yeah. So my name is Aaron Pewitt. I'm a investigator in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's the capital of North Carolina. I've been in this field going, it would be, let's see, going around at 6 years. So December 15th would have been my sixth year within the field. Um, I have been an investigator for 4 of those years. And then back in 20, I want to say 21, 20, late 2020, and then into early 2022, I was as a in-home slash foster care worker. So I did that for about a year, almost 2 years. But my current role is an investigator.
Okay, so the concept of being an investigator varies from country to country, jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Can you give us a sense of what do investigators do in your?
Yeah. So my investigator here in North Carolina, we are we're the first responders to when we receive allegations of a report. So as soon as a report is screened in, we're the ones that go out, make the initial contact with the families. We're the ones who review those allegations with the families, try to develop a safety plan if needed for those families, and then continue on to investigate those allegations by talking to parent provided collaterals, school collaterals, medical, anybody in the community that maybe have a close connection to this family, just to kind of get a broader um, just idea of this family and to see if there are really safety concerns that need to be addressed or not. And then once we have 45 days to complete those tasks in that our investigation. So once we hit that time frame, we have to make a decision. All right, is there concern? No, we'll close the case. Is there concern? All right, let's figure out what we need to do next. Do we need to remove the child from their family's care? Do we need to transfer it to in-home services just for some extended services and just some extra support for the family if they need it?
Okay, so 45 days is the total amount of time that you have at the front end, and then you're saying if you deem the family and the children needing a bit more support or an intervention, it goes to an ongoing worker.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. That's how I'm going. Yep.
Okay, quite similar to how it is here in Toronto in Canada.
Okay.
Um, so so you've been at this one for about 4 years in
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. I've been an investigator for 4 years. I've been in my current position or the current county I work for. I've been here for over two, but I've worked in multiple counties throughout North Carolina.
Okay. Can you give us a sense of size and caseloads, things like that?
So Raleigh or Wake County, where I work, it's either the largest or second largest county in the state. Um, so the way it's kind of broken down in Wake County is um, we have different zones. So one zone will cover, like I cover the south end of the county. So I cover that. So, and then within that zone, we have about three or four teams of investigators and ongoing workers. Um, so since I have been there for the past, or over the past 2 years since I've been working with it, my caseload has been relatively steady and kind of low compared to other counties within North Carolina, especially other counties I've worked at. I think we kind of look between as we kind of average between um, 7 to about 13, 14, at least from where how long since I've been there and how long I've been working for the county. It's about 7 to 14. There have been some time periods where it's been higher, a little bit higher, just because we may have been shorthanded, or um, we hit one of our what we like to call like a trend,
Mhm.
and that's when school is about to end. And so
Yeah.
we kind of see a lot more reports come in because school is about to end or school has started, and so all those teachers are checking up with those kids they have worries about. They're now wanting some people to go out and check in on them.
And you say 7 to 14, is that per month?
Uh, that's well, it's yeah, I would say maybe not per month. That's just kind of like how many we hold. So
Okay.
that's how many we probably would carry. We typically would get maybe I want to say maybe like 6 to 7 a month, depending on how fast the cases are coming in, how fast we're kind of rotating through
I
um, rotation and that sort of thing.
Okay. In the jurisdiction you work in, Aaron, what I'll use the word typical, but there's nothing typical, obviously. I say obviously, it's those who
Yeah,
know within the context of what you do. What are the types of cases that you deal with? What are the ones that you see most often in
yeah.
your jurisdiction?
So it's kind of so where I am right now. A lot of it what we see, or a lot what I have seen, is domestic violence, and then some substance use. And then there's then a lot of what we would call, or what we would have screened in as like unsafe discipline, or maybe, and then some, we see sometimes like conditions of living space, and then stuff like that. It's a real kind of difference between what I see here and then what I've seen in other counties that I've worked. Because
Mm,
this is the first big metropolitan county I've worked for. All the past counties I've worked for have been very rural, poor. Um, so there's a very drastic difference between that and where I'm at right now.
okay. But I heard you say that the higher number though are domestic violence.
Yeah, me personally, at least, I have seen a lot of domestic violence more than I would have seen from other counties.
And can you describe give us context, what does how does domestic violence appear in for you in your system, so
Mhm.
much so that it gets opened up?
Yeah, so a lot of it can range from a child telling a teacher, hey, I saw dad hit mom,
Mm, okay.
and then it can start. That's one end of the spectrum, and then it can go to law enforcement has responded to a domestic violence incident where dad was, there was an assault. I mean, dad has been arrested for assault, mom is in the hospital for injuries, or vice versa, and then kind of everything in between. There's really not much. I mean, it really does range from what
Okay.
we screen in for domestic violence. So we at least our for what I've noticed, the state screening system we have is pretty serious about those kind of allegations. So we'll screen anything, even if there's not there. Like I've had instances where a 5, 6 year old said they saw dad hit mom, but it turned out mom and dad were just kind of like picking on each other.
Okay. And to those who might not understand or might ask right now, well, why is it Aaron's business? Because the police, it's an assault on mom. The police that's a police business. Why does Aaron show up to those? Can you give some idea of why child protection gets involved in those cases?
Yeah, so so whenever a report is screened in for domestic violence, we also tag on the um, maltreatment screening tool or screening name of injurious environment as well. So that kind of gives us the whole thing to go in, because most likely that child is going to be inside the house when this is happening. So that's, even though the child may not be a direct victim of domestic violence, they are going to see it, they're going to witness it. but also we're also there to help mom too. So if if dad does get arrested, we want to make sure mom knows how to go file a domestic violence protection order. We want to make sure mom has access to different domestic violence agencies, resources, all that are within the county to make sure that she is safe. She understands, hey, this is domestic violence, even if it may not be physical. If dad's controlling her money, if dad's controlling her social life, she can't go anywhere without him. She may not understand that's domestic violence. She may have it in her mind. He's just protective. He's just kind of a little bit of protective or obsessive.
Mm,
But that those are key um, factors of domestic violence, and so we want to make sure the victim mom understands that. And that way, she can act accordingly to make sure that her and her children are safe.
okay. And can you tell us also more about so so based on what you've seen and your knowledge and education and experience and training, so the kids see dad hits mom. So what does that have to do with you? Why is that a like what's
Yeah.
the worst of that?
So we want to make sure. So we want to make sure that a the kid knows that's not okay.
Okay.
When we want to make sure that um, if he's we want to make sure that behavior is not being repeated by the child, and we also want to make sure that he's got if it's not being repeated by the child, we want to make sure that he understands like this is what's going on. We can provide that mental health support to that child to so that he can process it himself and not let those feelings and what he witnessed, that secondary trauma,
Mm,
fester and become something that could make him or her a offender in that regard,
mm,
or he understands like they understand what domestic violence really is and what it means.
okay. And what have you seen in your experience the worst impact on children that you've seen who've witnessed domestic violence? What are the behaviors that
Yeah.
others are reporting or you've seen?
So a lot of times, luckily, I haven't seen children become violent. I mean, there may have been one or two instances I've seen in the past, but a lot of times I've seen is kids um, just be they like shut themselves off
Mm,
from their support systems, whether that be mom, grandparents, school, friends, their peers, what have you. Um, so that they really shut themselves off. They really just kind of bottle everything up. So that's the big thing I've seen is, and we want to make sure that they're getting where they're processing what they're feeling, they're processing what they've seen and heard, and um, so that does not become a problem down the road. That way
okay.
they understand, and and we also want to make sure they were provided the tools, the proper coping mechanisms, and that sort of thing to um, if they would say they finish treatment or whatever, they have
Mm,
those tools in case something comes back up years down the road or whatever.
I see. Okay, that's
Yeah.
helpful. I heard you also mention I forget the the way you described it, but homes that are cluttered or messy. I forget what
Yep.
you used. Can you give us a sense of what's the threshold? So, because we don't want people who might watch this to worry that if their house is a little bit messy, that
Right.
they're
Right.
gonna
Right.
see Aaron show up at their door. So, give us a sense of what the situations are when you get involved.
Yeah. So when it comes to conditions of the home, we're not going to get a report saying, "Oh, mom, the house is a little bit messy," or that you got a pile of dirty dishes. It's more of the fact like the family doesn't have access, or the home or the family does not have access to running water. There's no electricity, there's no heat.
Mm,
um, there's holes in the floor that could potentially be of harm or risk to a child walking through, especially if like say if like the family has small children within the home.
mm,
um, there's animal feces, there's trash piling up, stuff that would really pose an intimate or a high risk to a child living within those conditions. Um, so that's when we get those. That's kind of what are the we know what the screening intake people are looking for when someone's trying to make that kind of report.
I see. So pretty extreme situations you're saying that could potentially risk the safety and well-being of a child living in
Correct.
that home. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's helpful because yeah, we don't want people to worry that they're gonna get a knock on the door because
Yeah.
of dirty dishes.
Right. Right.
Okay. What you've done this for 6 years
Mhm.
in total. Um what do you would say are the misunderstandings? Um what do you think people misunderstand about what you do? What
Yeah.
it is that you do?
So I think the biggest misconception is, especially in North Carolina, and this kind of goes from what I heard from other people that I've known, especially in like the southeast of the United States, is that only thing that CPS does or Child Protective Service does is go and take children. That is
Okay.
our only job. It's and you hear that you especially hear that in like the rural areas
Mm,
of the state, um, because when I first started 6 years ago, I worked in my hometown, which is a small town in the mountains of North Carolina. Um, there was, we heard rumors, or there was always people getting mad because, oh, they're here to take your kids. That's all they're going to do. And there was a Facebook groups of families who have had CPS involvement, you know, bashing us like, oh, that's all they do, or that there was a rumor going around that we get paid $5,000 for every child that we take into custody.
okay.
So that I think that is the biggest misconception, is that's all we do. We do nothing else but take kids.
Okay. And uh from your experience, what are the conditions or situations where kids do come into care
Mhm.
and give us a sense of how often that happens in your jurisdiction.
Yeah. So for my experience, I think because I unfortunately it's happened. I've had to do it a handful of times just because I think it's really just kind of been like the luck of the draw for me. And that's it's just kind of like how it goes. But I've had it. There have been situations where there's substance affected infants, and the parents are still using those substances, or the families are not working their case plan, or working the safety plan that we put in place to address the allegations and safety concerns, and they're not working with us where we can't find them.
Mm,
um, so those right there, those three things, have been the really main reason I would have, in my personal experience, in the past of cases I've had, that have caused us to have to take custody of those kids, and and especially with the substance use and the family not working with us, cooperating with us. Um, in terms of the county where I work, it's hard to say, just because you know we'll hear that so and so's got to take custody, but I would say it doesn't happen all the time. Um, but I know on my team, because there's 5 people plus my supervisor on my team. We've all had to do it a couple of times, at least over the past 2 years. So it just it really just kind of comes down to, is it serious enough for us to take that kind of action, or
mhm.
can we use one of our preventative measures to prevent that child from coming into care? Um, and then, you know, is the family cooperating with us?
Okay.
So I think that's really come down to the big things, where why or what would lead to us coming. having to take a child into care for sure.
What's can you explain the child, you said child who are um again, I forget the word you used, on drugs. What word did you,
The substance affected infant.
subs, is that a term that's
Yes,
a technical term you
that is
okay.
a technical term.
What
Yes.
what is that? Can you tell people what that?
So that would be a child who was born with high levels of substances within their systems. They're addicted to drugs, basically, in layman's terms. So, we'll have a parent who was using some sort of narcotic while pregnant with them. And when that child is born, they have to be put in at least here since we have a lot of resources in Raleigh, they'll go to the special infant care unit.
Mm,
And they have to, the child is literally withdrawing from the substances because they are addicted. And so those nurses have to wean the child off those substances and provide extra care than you would a normal baby. Um, so that's kind of what I've seen those a handful of times while working here.
okay. And once again, not to scare people, um, and some of these questions, it's from my own experience. So
Sure.
I'm bringing that into it. I would hear people being worried about having a drink at night. So
Right.
can you give people a sense of this is a
Yeah.
baby that's testing positive versus like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
just a sense.
so we're it's really looking for, yeah, we'll get, there. So let me back up. Nurses at the hospital are mandated reporters. So it's really looking, even like if a parent smokes, because I've had a couple of times in the past where a mom smoked a little bit of marijuana during her pregnancy to help with her nausea,
Okay.
but that has to be reported because it's still a legal substance in North Carolina, and that child falls under substance affected infant, even though it may not be addicted, it may not have any withdrawal symptoms, it's still a legal substance.
Hmm.
So we'll do that, but in terms of alcohol, I mean, if mom has a drink or two throughout the entire pregnancy, that's we're not going to have any concerns about that. Um, what we're looking for is illegal substances or an abuse of substances. So a lot of times we're seeing, and a big trend we're kind of seeing right now is fentanyl use. We're seeing children being born test with high levels of fentanyl in their system, or other opiate. Opiates is a very it's a huge problem within the state of North Carolina.
Hmm.
Um, and so we'll see a lot of that. A lot of children test positive with opiates, and fentanyl. And again, fentanyl is on the rise here. So
Okay.
that's kind of what we really pay attention to. But again, like, even if it's something minor like marijuana, or if mom's has a prescription that
Hmm.
may pop up in the child's system. Even though she has a prescription, it's still considered, it may be questionable for that child, and so that nurse has to report it, even though it's a prescription. And if it's a prescription, we go talk to mom about it. She can show the prescription, that sort of thing. Okay, cool, we'll get out of your hair.
Yeah.
But we have to do our due diligence.
It's fascinating, and that there's knowing when you ask a question that isn't clear. So I apologize. I wasn't clear enough about the question that I was trying to ask.
No, it's
Uh,
okay.
it was more so not during pregnancy. So I want to be
Mhm.
incredibly clear to anyone who's watching this that according to at least from my experience and knowledge, no drinking is safe during pregnancy. I want to be very
Mhm.
clear about that.
Sure, absolutely.
Um, my question, and I'll reframe and ask it better. My question was more about use of substances. Forget
Mhm.
pregnancy right now.
Okay.
At what point do you become involved?
Yeah.
Is it like, so people get a sense of, again, I'm not trying to get people I could do this
Yeah.
much for that, but like just when I said if I have a drink at night, is child protection going to get involved with me? So can you give
Hmm.
a sense of what is it about substance use that gets you involved?
Yeah. So when it comes to substance use, it's has to come down to is there impact to the child.
Okay.
So what like we always kind of look at it like what's the impact to the child. So if you know if there's something that comes in like oh mom and dad decided to go out to have dinner, they had a glass of wine or two, and they come back, they're not intoxicated and they're not putting the child at risk, then that's not going to be a problem. Or if they're having a family get together, um, and there's responsible adults, even though there may be alcohol present or anything like that, it should not be a problem. We're looking at is it causing to a point where the parents are intoxicated, they're being aggressive toward their children, being aggressive to mom and dad, or each other, parents are being aggressive to each other. And is it, or is it, are the children being exposed to that said substance? So, if example is, allegations of mom smoking marijuana within the house and there's two small children in the house. Okay, then are they, then we'll go in and say, okay, are they being exposed? What's the issue there? So it's really more of what is the impact to the child.
Okay, so to clarify, and that's important, you're saying it isn't that you're drinking, it's more so if while you're drinking, there's a negative impact on your child. And that could be
Right. Is it going to put the child at risk?
correct.
Like
Okay, so at risk for emotional or physical harm.
correct. Like is there a party going on and mom's intoxicated and she's carrying around her infant child?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's important to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other misunderstandings that because this field is quite hidden from the
Hmm.
world. The only time there's a bit of exposure to it is when there are negative stories in the
Sure.
media, or you there might be a movie that shows a few scenes of CPS coming to the door. And
Yeah.
again, it's typically negative. What are some other misunderstandings? So give us like a you know
Yeah.
insight into your day. Like what do you
Yeah.
do during the day?
So my day, it starts out with um making sure we're all, doing kind of like the office stuff, make sure my notes and stuff are up to date. We have, policies and stuff that we have to keep up to date with, that sort of thing. But in terms of like involving with the clients, I'm calling the references I have for these families to follow up with the allegations and safety concerns for the family. But also, I think a big misconception that kind of ties in with what I do during my day is people. I don't think people understand that CPS can actually provide a lot of support and services to those families
Okay.
that those families may not know about or have access to. So a lot of times, I'll make referrals to um, housing services, financial services, food services, mental health services. I'll touch base with school transportation, talk to the schools. We'll collaborate with the schools to try to, hey, how can we make, what kind of support can we give this family? Um, where we can put in referrals for daycare vouchers, um, all sorts of different things that we can help the family with. And a lot of times, I'll go into when I receive a new family to work with. I'll go in there. Hey, is there anything I can do to help you guys? Is there anything that you need from me that we could possibly work together to make sure you have? Or I always try to make sure that they know that that's on the table if they need it. If they need anything, help or support, that I can try to do something about it. So I think that's definitely a misconception is that CPS, other than taking kids, we really just kind of go in there to disrupt their families' lives. But when really we try to help, we try to be supportive and let families know that.
So that's incredibly hard, I imagine, to do. Again, I did the job for many years, so I understand it. But for to those who've just heard what you said, may not appreciate how hard that is to do. So you're showing
Yeah.
up at somebody's house who doesn't want you there.
Yep.
You have no choice. You have to lead that process with them. So how do you bridge that gap between you don't want me here. I gotta verify that everything's okay, but at the same time, I'm here to help.
Yeah. So my approach to this family is when I meet families is more of I get it. I go in there and let them know that I'm there to hear their side of the story. As soon as I get there, I have some documents to give them, and then after I give them those documents, I will go straight into the allegations. Okay, here's the allegations. This is what I received. Tell me your side of the story. Tell me from what is going on. I want that way you have your voice is being heard and I can take the information that you're telling me and make sure that there are really no issues or safety concerns. And then that's what I try to do. I try to make sure that they're being heard, that I'm not just kind of brushing them off. I'm trying to make sure that you know the even though I have to be there and I have to look at these allegations, it's a collaboration between me and the family.
Okay.
That they have a say in this, that they're being advocated for. They know that I'm on their side, even if things are going rough, that I will be on by their side and trying to help them out as best as I need to be, at the best of my ability,
Mm.
and that they're not alone in this situation. And then I make sure to I give the county I work for. We have a website that had lists all the different resources within the county. It ranges from financial, housing, mental health, all that sort of stuff. So make sure they have that, even if they don't use it. They have that website and they can access it and they can see, oh, this actually might be helpful. And then if they want to do it, they're more than welcome to reach out to them that service, or they'll be like, hey, can you help me with this? I make sure they know that they can come to me for help as well. I try to um, I try to encourage a little bit of independence because I don't want families to be dependent on just me. I want
Mhm.
them to encourage them that hey, you can do this. Like you do this and you kind of encourage that. But if they need me for help, I'll be more than happy to.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is yeah, I got a call and I have a duty to come and figure out what's going on. However, this is going to be done with a lot of compassion and empathy and collaboration. And my end goal isn't to remove the kids. It's to make sure that you're going to be at your best, so your kids could be at their best.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Exactly. And I try to tell there's some stuff whenever we're reviewing documents or stuff, parents will see, if there's a statement on one of the forms I give them that they understand that, if we may have the agency may have to restrict access or place their child in foster care, that sort of thing. And a lot of families freak out about that, and I don't blame them. I would too. But I try to tell them like, hey, that is worst case scenario. That is, we have done A, B, and C. None of that has worked out. We need to ensure the safety of these children while we make sure that you guys have what you need. So you guys can be a family and these children can be safe with you. And like I tell people a lot because I got a piece of advice in high school that's stuck with me since for a very long time. I try to tell these families the same thing, but I always tell them, if you can't take care of yourself, you cannot take care of yourself others if you cannot take care of yourself.
Right. Okay.
So especially with families that need some assistance and help, and parents that need assistance and help, I tell them like, hey, let's focus on you. Let's get the needs and services for you. That way we can make sure everything else is good.
So I'm hearing that it isn't about punishing parents for behavior, but it's ensuring safety and well-being. As
Yes,
as you
and that's yes, and that's what we've been trained, and but and that's what they teach us in our pre-service training and ongoing training and that sort of thing as well. It's a very family-centered service and trainings that we're rolling and working with. Um, but it's also just my personal approach as well. Um, I always want to treat people how I want to be treated. I want to be treated with respect and understanding and compassion and empathy. So I try to do the same with my clients, and I found you do that, you most of the time will not have any issues. But if you're going in there, you're trying to tell them what to do, like you got to do this, whatever, then you're going to meet resistance. And once you start meeting that resistance and you start losing that rapport, um, it makes the whole situation much more difficult than it needs to be.
Okay. Um, what I forgot to ask you in the beginning, what led you to this
Oh yeah,
field?
yeah. So um, as a kid, I always knew I wanted to do something with people. That was just always a thing. I tried. I thought I wanted to go into the medical field to do something. I did a class in high school. It did not go well. I was like, all right, I know that's it. That's not going to work out. Um, but my mom was a social worker. She
Okay.
did this line of work for a long time, and she exposed me to it. I don't, when I say exposed, she would tell me about her day. She would tell me about her work. She'd give me some stories. Um, and that really interested me. It really did. And then, so when I went to school, when I went to college, I immediately enrolled in the social work program, and I was excited about it. And then there was a class I took, and it was like an introduction to social work, that sort of thing. And we were talking about neglect and stuff. And as a kid, I had experienced some stuff that some kids that we may work with would go through. And the professor was going through some definitions and stuff, and there was just like this light bulb went off my head, like,
Mhm.
whoa, I went through some of this stuff. Like this is stuff that I experienced when I was younger. And so when I had that aha moment, I knew I was in the had picked the right major. I knew I was going to go in the right profession because I knew I had gotten past all that stuff. I had learned from it. I had grown from it. I am, I'm making myself better. I can use my experience and translate it into my work and my relationships with these families. And so that's what kind of what propelled me even further into
Mhm.
this line of work.
Nice. And what is the if anyone who's listening and is interested maybe going into this field, what is the background or education or training that you
Yeah.
need or training that
So
you get to be
yeah.
in this role?
So I have a bachelor's in social work. Um, and when so yeah, I knew you don't necessarily have to have a bachelor's in social work to go into child protective services. You can have like a bachelor's in social work or psychology, or there's something else. I can't remember what it is exactly, but it's not necessarily just social work.
Mhm.
But the social work major, at least within the state of North Carolina, really focuses on that family centered training that is very beneficial for child protective services. And so once you graduate, you have to do what's called pre service training. And that's just the more in depth training for the actual job in working within the agency of child protective services. Um, Now, I know in the state of North Carolina, when you're in school, there's a program that you can be accepted in, um, where you get pre-serviced before you even graduate. You do the pre-service training before you even graduate, and it's a pretty big deal, because not many kids, not many students within the state get picked each year. It's a very small number that they do, and so I was one of those. They accepted me, and I was able to complete it. And so as soon as I graduated on December 13th of 2018, and then I was able to go into a start my job on December 15th.
Oh wow.
Um,
So it's
so
like
because I had that training.
yeah, that training. Got it.
Yeah, and so there was no delays or anything. I'm here. Here's your case. Let's go. Yeah,
Yeah. Organizations dream about hires like you where
yeah,
you come in and you get the caseload on the first day.
yep,
So that's fantastic. Again, it's to give people an idea of the type of education. Do you get regular trainings as
yeah.
well? Yeah.
So within the state of North Carolina, working in CPS, you have to. It's required for you to complete 24 hours of ongoing training per year. And that can really be anything. It's up to your discretion of what those trainings are. You can pick and choose. There's a website called North Carolina Social Worker Learn.org. It's called NCWSWLearn.org, but it's North Carolina Social Worker Learn.org. It has the list of all different trainings that are available throughout the state, either in person or online. And so it's stuff from updated investigative training to what new substance use training. So like what new trends, what to look for. So different kind of stuff like that. So yes, there's lots of opportunities for trainings and development and growth for the workers in the state.
Okay. Okay. So your job isn't easy. Uh, there's a lot that's challenging about it. What for you are um the biggest challenges or hardships of your
Yeah.
job every day?
So I think the biggest hardships are the situations where you're not when I have a family that doesn't is not cooperative with me, or the times where you can't find them. Like you'll get a report, you'll make that initial contact, and then after that initial contact, they're gone. You don't know where they are. They're not answering. They're not at the where they you had met them, whether that be an apartment, a home, a hotel, what have you. Um, and so you guys spend the rest of that time frame doing or completing due diligence to try to find them. Um, I think that's a big deal. That can be very difficult. Also, I think what can be very difficult is just handling handling a lot of the secondary trauma that may come across that we may deal with. Um, there's been situations where I mean I've seen a lot of different things. I've experienced a lot of different things. I've had to work within a lot of different situations where there's some really really terrible things that have happened to some kids. And handling that, knowing how to handle it, making sure that you're okay, that so you can keep being that support for your other families that may not be in a bad situation. They just need some help, or you're trying to get out of their hair. Make sure you keep balanced. I think that is probably the biggest challenge, because yeah, you got to make sure these kids are okay and safe, but you also got to make sure that you're okay so you can continue being that support system for these other families, because these other families are relying on you. And if you can't do that, then those families may suffer in terms of not getting what they need that you said you're going to help them with.
Yeah, that's a massive responsibility on you. So I do want to hear a bit more about how you manage that responsibility and on a personal
Yeah,
level. Before that, though, um, keeping it PG,
yeah,
not too graphic. But what are
sure.
the horrible things that you see that happen to kids that
Uh, there's
lead to that secondary trauma?
Yeah. So I've had two investigations where I had to in the 6 years I've luck thankfully I've only had two investigations where I've had to investigate child fatalities. Those were rough. There was very I've had to look into different degrees of physical child abuse. Um, and there's been a few sexual abuse investigations I've looked into as well. Um, those all there's been a handful of those that I've had to look into over the past 6 years or so, that were rough. And so with that, yeah, that was probably the worst. And then there's been some there was some with, serious substance use that would put us a child in some pretty bad situations. But I think from the off the top of my head, those were probably definitely the worst, that some of the ones I've looked into.
So that gives viewers an understanding when you speak of you mentioned secondary trauma, so these are pretty
Yeah.
serious situations. So tell us a bit more about how you handle that responsibility, because
Yeah.
you take on the if I'm not well, I can't help the family be well. So how
Yeah.
do you manage all of that?
So, I kind of have a therapist on standby if I need it.
Okay.
I seek out mental health treatment for myself, and then I can go to my mom, who did this for a while. She's still in this kind of work, but not CPS, but the mental health field. So she knows what it's like. She knows the experience. She knows, she's seen her fair share. So it's someone I can go talk to, be like, man, I mean, I had this one report and it was just terrible, and so I can have that dialogue with her. And the agency I work for also has pretty good support for their employees as well. So if I need to access that, I can. But typically, just talking to a therapist, talk to my mom, and sometimes I have a long car drive home, so I can just throw on like a show and just kind of like drown everything out, and just kind of I I walk through it myself as well, and just kind of, not, I don't want to say necessarily just repeat it, but it's kind of process it myself too. Because I have those tools and skills and stuff that I've learned that help myself. So I have just a variety of different ways to help myself if need if need be, and I make sure I take advantage of all of them.
Yeah. Important that others understand that that secondary trauma uh is a huge part of your
Yeah,
job, and that unless you had those skills and resilience that you talked about, it would be pretty tough.
it is, and a lot of people. So there's one thing I noticed: a lot of people, especially when I graduated school, let me back up. When before I graduated, we had to do internships, and some people, other people chose to intern at a local CPS agency. Doesn't matter. It's kind of all over the state, and a lot of those kids did not expect what to see and experience. They had no idea. I
Mhm.
kind of did, because, like I said, my mom kind of exposed me to that before I even went to college. So I kind of had an idea and understanding, but a lot of these people didn't, and then they were not prepared. And so
Mhm.
they either went into it thinking maybe I can handle it, and they could not, or they just chose not at all to go into child protective services. So I think, able to have that strong, um, it's like a mentality of just a strong will to be able to kind of handle and process it, and having those tools and skills and sports for is really, really key.
Absolutely. uh so it's not is there anything else that's challenging or hardships that you haven't talked
Um,
about that you think it'd be important for the public to hear about?
in terms of working with the families, I think that's what kind of, on my experience, I think that's been the big challenges, other than just making sure that administrative stuff and that whatnot is taken care
Yeah,
of. But other than that,
the
that's it.
paperwork. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not always all bad. I'm
No.
assuming there's wonderful and
Oh,
inspiring.
yeah,
Tell us a bit about what's rewarding about the job.
absolutely. You know, rewarding for me is helping out families that, actually need help. I've had situations where I've been able to find families housing, where they definitely need housing, or at least connect them to services that can provide help with housing. Putting in those, just families. There's been a situation where families are just so happy and grateful that I just put in a referral for them. Um, but I one thing that really stuck out to me, and that's really stayed with me is a couple years ago when I was actually doing foster care. I worked with a mom who has, I think he was about 15 years old at the time. I had to take custody of him, and I ended up working with him in foster care as well. Um, Mom, there's some serious substance abuse issues going on with mom, but I stuck with her. I stuck with her. I made sure that she had the support. I made sure that she had the backing from me, and I within 5 months of me taking custody, we reunified,
Hmm.
and she said, it would not have happened if I did not back her up. It would not have happened if she would not have been there if I did not have her back. And that moment right there, I don't know, this just stuck with me. It was She was so happy. She was so, I mean, she was doing so well. And yeah, I was thrilled for her. I was so thrilled. And I was really happy to see that, I was able to bring that mom and kid back together. Because they had a bond. They were very close. It's just she needed help. And so just knowing that, even if it's little things, um, just little things, sending a parent information for like a job fair, or getting some daycare vouchers done, just little things, knowing that I can help out or make the life of a family just a little bit easier. And that's enough for me. As long as I'm not looking, because I'm not looking for the impact, or like, oh my God, I did this, or whatever. I just, as long as I can just do a little good, I
Small.
know I that's yeah. I know I know I'm just doing a good job, and that's what I do. I just want to make sure that these families know, like, hey, these families know that CPS is not just what we talked about earlier about taking kids and disrupting lives. We're here to help. And a lot of families I work with are like, oh my God, I didn't know CPS could do all this. I've had caseworkers in the past and they never offered any of this stuff to me, or they never offered to help. Um, so just knowing that I can change the misconceptions, or just in the families here and there that I work with,
Hmm.
I think I'm doing good work, and that's what I want to do, is just do good work and make small impacts here or there.
So what is the ideal outcome you'd say in cases you work with? What is the ideal outcome?
Ideal outcome: get in and out as quickly as possible, as long as when there's no safety concerns. Everything's good. We marked a safe safety plan. You don't have to do a plan. You're good. Everybody I've talked to says you're fine. You're great parents. There's no safety concerns. Great. See you later. Have a good life. I don't want to be that worker that drags families through the mud and the hardships of having CPS involved, unless if I don't have to. I do my checks. Everything's works great. See you later. I hope you don't come back. I mean, it was nice meeting you, but I hope I don't have to see you again in these situations. Um,
It's one of
so
those situations. Yeah, great meeting you. Hope never see you again.
right, exactly. Um, and so, but that is my ideal outcome. Just great. But if there's stuff we have to do, the ideal outcome is they're following the safety plan. They're working with the resources that we've provided. They're working with us. They're doing the things they need to do. I'm doing what I need to do as a support and an advocate. Awesome. We can close your case out because you've done what you needed to do. We prevented from having to take custody. That's a good day.
Okay. So that's important for the public to know. Are there any other realities about child welfare that you think might be important to put out there?
Um,
So we heard you say, look, we're interested in your best outcomes. We're interested in ensuring that the children are safe, shortest possible intervention. Anything else that you'd like to tell us about?
that CP yes, CPS is not necessarily a bad thing. We can always provide us support. You need help, we'll help however we can. All you gotta do is, if we're involved, all you gotta do is just ask, and we'll do what we can. Um, I think so. That's just the biggest thing. I can't think of anything else, but I think this biggest thing is, yeah, we're a mandated service. If a report comes in on our family, I'm sorry it came in, but let's work and get this done with, so we can move on. You can move on with your life. I can move on with my life, and if we need to help you out, we will.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned now isn't a little thing, it's a huge thing because what you're putting out there is, look, call us, we'll help. Don't be scared to call us.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine a time if families phoned for help
Hmm.
without being scared. Um, what so um without obviously you know this without sharing specifics, this is kind of the people are always want to know about your crazy cases, the fun, the kind of funny
Yeah,
situations you find. What are some of the craziness that you'd only see on movies or TV that you've found
yeah.
yourself in?
So I think, I mean, the craziest one that comes to mind is when I first started in the job, and working in my hometown. Like I said, it's a small mountain town in North Carolina. Poor, a lot of issues. But the craziest part was, I got a case. This mom, it was there. Well, the report came in, allegations of this kid and this man who was clearly high on something was walking around in the middle of the night in the downtown area of the town. And this man happened to be one of the biggest meth production and sellers distributors in the county. So, and law enforcement was called. So we get in there. I start hunting for this mom and child. Like, I figure out who the mom is. I figure out who the child is. But I have to start hunting for her. So I'm having to go through. I I get connected with our local narcotics task force with the sheriff's department. And so me and these detectives, we start going knocking on doors of drug dens and just really sketchy places in the town and outside the in the county. And we're going through homeless camps in the middle of the woods, and just having we were turning the county upside down to try to find them. And it took us a little bit. It took us about 2 weeks or so to find them. But the things I saw, I mean, I'm going through this, and I'm at the time, what was I? I was like 23, 24 years old, going through these really just crazy places that I've seen them. I've driven past them because they're right, kind of right there. But to actually go in these places and to actually walk through them, oh, that's a whole nother thing. And so just having to just go, like I said, search the county and find these family, and then just find that, once I did find the family, that to find like the entire family, mom, grandparents, cousins, and uncles, what have you, are all heavy, heavy, heavy drug users.
Wow.
Like we have nowhere for this kid to go stay because we can't find dad, and so we're coming up with plans, and that was crazy. And then because like we would put with the child with one family member, and then turns out that family member is using drugs, and then we go to another, and they're using him. Like, what is going on? And so we ended up finally finding dad, um, and he was safe, so we were able to put the kid with dad. But just it was super eye opening because I knew that the county I'm from and where I worked at the beginning, I knew they had a really bad problem. It was, I don't know if it still is, but back then it was going back between like in the top three counties of the state of meth production and use in the entire state. So I knew it was bad, but just to kind of actually experience firsthand in these going through these places and seeing everything, and you're like, wow, this is insane.
What
Um,
what's a drug den look like, Aaron?
yeah, so at least in the rural North Carolina, mountains of North Carolina, it is a just a rundown trailer
Okay.
that's just got trash, and you see like the beakers and the stuff they're using to make the drugs in, and like it's just filthy. There it is, just disgusting. So yeah, it's
Aaron,
someplace you don't want to go.
oh, so you see, drug dens in here it would be where you'd walk into a room where people are passed out because they're using drugs and it's dirty and so on. You're referring to the like Breaking Bad type.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. When like I said, it's like I said, you go up the mountains, and while it's beautiful up there, it's just very poor. It's just very, very poor, and so they scrounge up what they can to
Yeah, yeah.
get their fix.
What's so North Carolina sits East Coast?
Yep.
Okay. What's on the top of North, just the state above North Carolina is which again? Remind me.
Virginia.
Virginia, right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So there's you say the hills, the mountains there. So Southern Virginia is all hilly, mountainy, goes into North Carolina.
Part of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Part of it.
Um, so 6 years, what lessons, what do you do like so far? I mean, you're still many years away from retirement. Where are you at? Lessons learned. Where are
Yeah.
you at now?
Um. So I've learned a lot of what not to do, just because a lot of places we're cutting corners, and there's a lot of stuff that were questionable decisions. So I've learned what not to do, but also kind of learn this is the right what I'm doing now, and actually being able to provide services and not just going in there and be like, hey, this is what you got to do, is the right thing to do. I've definitely learned more. Not to say I didn't have it when it first started, because I definitely did, but more compassion and empathy.
Mm,
Um, because when I first worked there, when I first started, a lot of the supervisors and stuff were like, just go in there, get it done, get out, do what you got to do. But I think that also came with, you know, they were short staffed. We all were carrying 20, 30 cases at a time. And so there
mm,
wasn't time to actually do proper social work. It
mm-hmm.
was almost impossible. Um, so, going in there and making sure you can offer those services, be compassionate, be empathetic, make sure you advocate and have those families' backs. I think that is a huge, huge lesson, and that can be very. It's a very useful skill and tool for the worker. That way,
Mm,
you can have a very positive relationship with those families.
nice. And if someone watching right now is interested in joining the field, what advice or recommendations would you give them?
Um, One would be, of course, you know, you can't take care of others if you can't take care of yourself. I mean, that's a big one. But just to make sure that you keep an open mind. You keep an open mind. Like you see these allegations, that come in and they sound terrible. They may sound awful, but in reality, it's very misconstrued, and that these people, this is just a family that is just struggling, and they just need a little bit of help and support. Um, and that they just make that these workers that coming in, that make sure they listen to what the family is saying.
Mm.
They don't disregard or blow off what a family member is saying. That they listen and take it all in with stride. That way, you can have a very successful relationship, and you can have a good understanding of these families.
Okay. Anything that you want to close with? Anything you haven't said? Any question you
Um,
wish I would have asked and didn't?
no questions. I just want to say that this field can be a very rewarding field. Obviously, on the other hand, it can be very stressful and very demanding. But it can be the reward can the rewarding side can definitely outweigh the stress and demanding if you do things proper, and have those working relationships with those families. So I think any workers that are coming in here that got cold feet or like, oh, I don't know, if they, I feel like if they just kind of take it like they need to, or build those relationships with those families, they may have a different outlook on this work, and either decide, actually maybe I can do this, maybe I can, this is for me. Because you're gonna have bad days. That's just comes with the job. But there I've had more good days than bad, so I think you just stick with it, and do those little things. I think it'll make a whole difference.
Wonderful. Uh, well, thank you so much. Thank you for your story and thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
of course.
And
Thank you.
yeah, okay, wonderful.